Most people toss their banana peels straight into the trash. That one habit might be quietly costing them the best tomato harvest of their life. For years, old-school gardeners have kept a quiet secret hiding in their kitchen scraps. It's not something you buy at a garden center. It's not a fancy fertilizer blend. It's the peel sitting in your fruit bowl right now. Tomatoes and peppers are heavy feeders. They pull huge amounts of nutrients from the soil just to push out flowers and fruit. And one nutrient matters more than almost anything else for these plants: potassium. Potassium controls how a tomato plant moves water and sugar into its fruit. Without enough of it, you get tall, leafy plants and small, pale, disappointing tomatoes. Peppers do the same thing. Plenty of green leaves. Barely any peppers. Banana peels happen to be loaded with potassium, along with smaller amounts of phosphorus and calcium. It's almost the exact mix these plants are begging for. But here's the part almost nobody gets right. Tossing a whole peel into the soil and walking away barely does anything. It breaks down too slowly, attracts pests, and by the time it releases its nutrients, your plant has already struggled through weeks of deficiency. There's a better way. A method old gardeners have quietly used for generations to turn banana peels into something far more powerful than a slow-release scrap. Done right, it can push a plant from a handful of tomatoes to a harvest so heavy the branches need support just to hold it up. So what's the actual method? And why does almost every online tutorial skip the one step that makes it work? That's coming up next. Here's a mistake that plays out in gardens everywhere, and almost nobody notices it happening. A gardener drops a banana peel straight into the soil, feels good about it, and walks away. Weeks later, their tomatoes look exactly the same. Nothing changed. The peel is still sitting there, barely broken down, doing almost nothing. The problem isn't the banana peel. It's the method. A whole peel takes weeks to break down, and by the time it releases anything, the plant's growth window has already passed. Blending it into a paste isn't much better. That wet mush sits against the stem and invites mold and fungus gnats instead of nutrients. The fix is simpler than either of those. It's a soak, not a solid. Cut the peel into small pieces, roughly the size of a coin. More surface area means the potassium releases far faster than a peel left whole. Place those pieces in a jar of clean water, just enough to cover them completely. Then let time do the work. 6 hours is the minimum for the water to pull out a meaningful amount of nutrients. Overnight is better. Rush this step, and you're basically watering your plants with flavored water instead of fertilizer. You'll know it's ready when the liquid turns a light amber color. That's the potassium and trace minerals leaving the peel and moving into the water, right where the roots can reach them. One step left, and it's the one most tutorials leave out entirely: straining. Every leftover fragment needs to come out before this liquid touches the soil. Leave solids behind, and they rot underground, drawing mold and insects right to the base of your plant. A fine mesh strainer or clean cloth handles it in seconds. What's left should be a clear, amber liquid. Nothing more. Loosen the top layer of soil before you pour. Compacted soil makes water run off the surface instead of soaking down to the roots, and that means most of the nutrients never make it where they're needed. Once the soil is loosened, pour the liquid slowly around the base. Once a week is enough. Push it more than that, and you risk crowding out other nutrients the plant needs just as much. Do this consistently, and something happens in the first couple of weeks that catches most people off guard. 10 days in, a gardener checks a plant expecting nothing. Instead, there's a cluster of small flower buds where there was only a bare stem the week before. That timing isn't random. It lines up with how long tomato and pepper plants typically take to respond to a steady boost of one of their primary macronutrients. Here's where most people accidentally undo their own progress. They assume more is better, so they start pouring banana peel water daily instead of weekly. That throws off the balance between potassium, nitrogen, and calcium. Too much potassium can actually block a plant from absorbing calcium, and that imbalance is commonly linked to blossom end rot, the sunken, dark patches gardeners usually blame on everything except their own watering habits. Potassium isn't a cure-all. It's one piece of a balance that has to stay in check. If you're not sure where your soil stands before adding anything, a simple soil pH meter takes the guesswork out of it. I've linked one in the description if you want to check yours. There's one more detail. Almost every tutorial gets wrong, and it has nothing to do with the water itself. It's where you pour it. Pouring directly against the stem invites rot right at the base. The roots that actually absorb nutrients spread out several inches away, not underneath the stem. Pour in a ring around that outer area instead, and the plant takes up the solution far more efficiently. Get the ratio right, strain it properly, and pour it in the right spot. And something starts happening that most gardeners don't expect from something this simple. The plants stop just growing. They start outperforming the ones fed with store-bought fertilizer, and the gap becomes obvious within weeks. By week 3 or 4, one plant in the row looks noticeably different from the rest. Fuller, heavier, covered in flower clusters instead of scattered buds. That difference comes down to a steady, consistent supply of nutrients. A steady potassium supply helps the plant move sugars into the fruit at an even rate, instead of in the stressed, uneven bursts that come from feeding too much or too little at once. One more habit is worth building into the routine. Alternating banana peel water with a diluted compost tea gives the plant a broader range of nutrients instead of leaning on potassium alone. If you're already composting kitchen scraps, a simple compost bin makes that pairing almost effortless. I've linked one below if you want to set that up. None of this requires a complicated system. It requires paying attention to a few details most people skip: small pieces, a proper soak, a clean strain, and the right spot to pour. Something you were about to throw in the trash turns out to be one of the simplest tools in the garden, not because it's magic, but because it gives your plants exactly what they were missing all along. So here's the real question. Which part surprised you most? The potassium and calcium balance, or the fact that where you pour it matters just as much as what's in it? And what are you growing this season that you're hoping to push a little further? If this helps, stick around. There's a lot more like this coming, and subscribing means you won't miss it.